College football is just a few months away, and teams and coaches are desperately trying to find who will be their starting quarterback. There are quarterback battles raging all over America right now, and things are going pretty well down in the SEC. The SEC returns some of the most talent at the quarterback spot, and there are some guys who will be new, some guys who are transferring in, and then obviously guys who played last year. Right now there are a lot of projections and expectations for who will be the starters, but today I'm going to give my own opinion. I'm going to talk about who I want to start for each and every SEC school. There are 16 SEC teams obviously, and not all the guys who I want to play will be the ones who trot out in week 1. Instead of trying to project who will start, I'm going to pick who I want to start. I'm going to go through each and every SEC school, talk about the guy I want under center, but before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and pick SEC starting quarterbacks. With Billy Napier being on the hot seat going into 2025, everyone is looking to DJ Lagway to be the answer. Lagway ended up having an incredible season at the Willis School in Texas, throwing for nearly 5,000 yards and 58 touchdowns as a senior combined. He was the Max Preps National Player of the Year and a 5-star recruit. Lagway arrived with a lot of hype, but ultimately he was the backup to Graham Mertz. Once Mertz got hurt though, Lagway came in and ended up having a really solid finish to the 2024 campaign. Lagway not only got them to a bowl game, but was decently solid in the process. He ended up leading them to a top 10 victory over Mississippi, and in total he had 1,900 yards with 12 touchdowns and then 9 interceptions. He obviously had his growing pains, but some say he's in real pain right now. Some are saying that Lagway has been dealing with an injury and has not been throwing, and some say this could be a nightmare scenario for Florida. I think this is people just trying to get clicks, but Lagway's the guy I want to start for Florida this fall, and I want to see him ball out. As Texas now prepares to move on without Quinn Ewers, you can say they have a decent option in the cupboard in Arch Manning. Everyone's been talking about him for years, and I don't really have to go into detail about this guy, but he ended up being the #1 overall recruit in the country and is obviously related to Peyton and Eli Manning. After playing sparingly in 2023 during his redshirt season, he'd play and start in a couple of games in 2024. In total, he has nearly 1,000 yards with 13 combined touchdowns. Manning will take over with nearly impossible expectations this fall, and he's definitely the guy I want to see under center for the Longhorns. While the first round of March Madness is over and there's been a lot of chalk, there is still a good opportunity to cash in on the games that are remaining. From the first tip-off to the Final Four, MyBookie has you covered in terms of high-stakes matchups, wild finishes, and big-time opportunities. They've packed in promotions, props, and features that make betting on this event not only exciting, but also profitable. For example, we have 4 really solid games on Friday, so if you're a fan of the Tennessee Volunteers and you think they're finally going to move on to the Final Four, go ahead and pick them over Kentucky, or maybe you're going to go with the Cinderella of the Ole Miss Rebels. And if you have a hunch that a certain team is going to win, like Cooper Flagg and Duke, you should just go ahead and make that pick. There are plenty of matchups throughout the rest of the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 and throughout the tournament that you can also make your pick on. When you decided what you're going to pick, go over to MyBookie and use my promo code Fisher50 for your first bet. Despite a calm start to the month of March, I think the madness will finally ensue in these later rounds, so be sure to take advantage of all the craziness. Again, be sure to use Fisher50 over at MyBookie. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's video. In a perfect world, I would pick someone else besides Diego Pavia to start for Vanderbilt, but they don't really have a realistic option behind 4 guys with no experience. It's going to have to be Pavia. Everyone knows his story at this point, as he ended up coming out of both New Mexico's JUCO system and played at New Mexico State before transferring to Vanderbilt this past fall. He ended up having an incredible season in which he threw for nearly 2,300 yards and 20 touchdowns. He also ran for 800 yards and 8 touchdowns and has become the best Vanderbilt quarterback in quite some time, but he's on my bad side because of his whole fight against the NCAA for the JUCO stuff. In a world where NIL, transfer portal, and extra year waivers have started to plague the sport and make it borderline unwatchable at times, Pavia has been at the forefront of a fight to make junior college football not college football. I'm not sure what else it is because it's not high school or prep school, but somehow Pavia found a flaw in the system and has found a way for all junior college players to get more eligibility. We're getting closer and closer to the point where there won't even be eligibility requirements anymore and players can just play forever. That's why I'm annoyed with Pavia, but he's a good player and I hope he has a good season. At this point, a lot of you guys know the story of John Mateer, as he was an underrated recruit coming out of Little Elm High School, finishing with over 8,000 all-purpose yards and 88 touchdowns. He got a late offer to go to Washington State, where he sat behind Cam Ward for a couple of years before taking over this past season. Mateer became one of the best quarterbacks in college football, throwing for 3,200 yards, 29 touchdowns, and also rushing for 800 yards and 15 scores. Oklahoma is trying to get better production after Jackson Arnold and Michael Hawkins Jr. did not get the job done, so John Mateer comes in as the number 2 overall transfer quarterback and is a Heisman candidate for the Sooners. He's the guy I want starting for Oklahoma this fall, and I don't think anybody will fight me on that one. Going over to the Missouri Tigers, they will have to replace the production that Brady Cook had over the last 3 years. They have a weird quarterback room with Drew Pine, Sam Horn, and true freshman Matt Zollers, but Bo Pribula is the guy I want starting, and I think that's who Mizzou wants starting as well. Coming out of high school, Pribula was only a 3-star recruit, but he was dominant while he was at Central York. He holds both county and school records with 108 career touchdowns, but was only listed as a 3-star recruit. He was in the same class as Drew Aller, but in his time as a backup in 2023 and 2024, he combined for 9 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns. He filled in a couple of times and looks like a solid starting quarterback, but he wasn't going to get an opportunity with Drew coming back. Pribula goes to Mizzou on a hefty NIL deal and should be able to work his magic in the SEC, and honestly, I think he's a lot like Brady Cook. He won't be a first-round pick, but he'll get the job done, will be gritty, and will make plays. Alright, you guys have waited long enough in the video for me to make my first controversial take, as I want the Kentucky Wildcats to move forward with Cutter Boley instead of their transfer quarterback Zach Calzada from Incarnate Word. Calzada is one of those guys who's on his 15th year after 4 different schools, and we already know what we're going to get with him. Cutter Boley, on the other hand, is a guy who, in my opinion, has nearly unlimited potential. Boley at one point was ranked as a 5-star recruit, but after reclassifying, he sort of fell apart. He went to Lexington Christian Academy in his hometown. He ended up reclassifying, and this would hurt him. He had over 8,000 yards and 82 touchdowns during his prep career, and would decide to arrive at Kentucky last year as an early enrollee. Some sites had him as a 3-star, some had him as a 4. He'd make his first career start last year in their final game against Louisville, and he was just alright. Obviously, he was young and inexperienced and needs a full offseason to develop, but that's why I think they should go for him. Mark Stoops desperately needs to get Kentucky's offense and mojo back, and will a 1-year rental who really wasn't all that good at A&M really fix things? I don't think so. Boley, on the other hand, is a hometown guy who has a lot of potential, was really good in high school, and they should pour all the resources in him so they can hopefully get a multi-year starter who can turn things around. That's just my opinion though, and they'll likely go with Calzada. The next guy I want to talk about is Taylon Green at Arkansas. The guy is 6'6" and somewhat of a prodigy-like quarterback, but we really haven't gotten that much out of him so far. He ended up committing to Boise State after having 2,200 yards and 25 touchdowns, and coming out of Louisville, he was a guy who was supposed to take over for Hank Bachmeier at Boise. It would end up happening as he had a tremendous 2022 season with the Broncos, but after a bad 2023 season, he would transfer ahead of 2024. He decided to go to Sam Pittman in Arkansas, where he would win the starting job over Malachi Singleton. In his first year starting, Taylon threw for 3,200 yards with 15 touchdowns and 600 yards and 8 scores on the ground. He is back for his final year of eligibility in 2025, and Arkansas needs to go all in on him. Sam Pittman desperately needs him to work, and hopefully he can become an NFL guy as well. Alright, we'll now get to my second controversial take of the video, and I think Auburn needs to skip the whole Ashton Daniels and Jackson Arnold stuff and just go all in on Deuce Knight. The last time Auburn started a true freshman quarterback was when they had Bo Nix, and there's no reason why Deuce Knight should not fall into that same category. Knight ended up going to George County High School in Mississippi and had a tremendous career while he was there. He ended up having nearly 8,000 passing yards and 56 touchdowns, and also had 1,400 yards and 31 scores on the ground. He was a 5-star recruit, and his brother was actually Ty Freifogel, the guy who played for Indiana and is currently in the NFL. At 6'4", he's also an athletic phenom, was super fun to watch in high school, and has a nearly endless ceiling. Originally he was committed to Notre Dame, but he would flip to Auburn, and they need to go all in on this guy right away. You do not want him transferring, and I don't think the ceiling of Jackson Arnold is very high anymore, and Ashton Daniels is definitely not going to get it done either. If Hugh Freeze really wants to see success at Auburn, he should pour all his resources into the guy who can get him there, and they should go with Deuce Knight, but they're going to trot out Jackson Arnold in week 1. One of the more interesting situations to watch in the SEC will be the Ole Miss quarterback position. They've had 2 straight superstars in Matt Corral and Jackson Dart, and many are hoping that Austin Simmons is the next guy in line. Coming out of Pahokee High School in Florida, he passed for 3,200 yards as a sophomore and then committed to Florida. Ultimately, he would flip to Mississippi and then also reclassified. He came into Ole Miss as a 17-year-old, and no one thought he'd ever get a chance to really play. He was considered a 4-star prospect, but Simmons ended up taking the backup role last year ahead of guys like Walker Howard. Now Simmons is likely going to be the number 1 option, and while I don't really know that much about him or how talented he is, I think he's the guy that Ole Miss should go all in on, and I'm excited to see what he can do next fall for them. If not, maybe Pierce Clarkson can get something going. I doubt it though. Tennessee has more stability at the quarterback position than most other schools in the Southeastern Conference, as after Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton, Nico Iamaleava has taken over. The 6'6" 5-star from Long Beach, California, played a little bit in their bowl game last year and then took over as the full-time starter in 2024. He threw for 2,600 yards with 19 touchdowns and has definitely room for improvement, but is a big-time NFL prospect and already proved he could get Tennessee to the playoff. I think he can continue to improve and be one of the more exciting players in the country, but I also have to admit, I am excited to see what either Jake Merklinger or George McIntyre can do in the future, but for now, it's Nico's team for at least one more year. Texas A&M had quite the year at quarterback last year, as Connor Weigman started out the season, but he was later benched in favor of Marcel Reed, who had won over the locker room. The former 4-star recruit, who was an Ole Miss commit, came out of Montgomery Bell Academy in Nashville and had nearly 8,000 all-purpose yards. Reed ended up playing a little bit last year and got his feet wet in that game against Texas A&M, in that game against LSU, and in total had 1,800 yards with 15 touchdowns and 6 picks, with 547 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. Reed is the most exciting quarterback they've had since Kellen Mond, and I want them to go all in on him and to see how high his ceiling could be. Alright, the next controversial pick will be Luke Kromenhoek from Mississippi State. I see absolutely no reason why Blake Shapen should run out as the starter for Mississippi State. He's already played like 6 years of college football and honestly isn't all that good. Luke Kromenhoek, on the other hand, was a borderline 5-star recruit who put up ridiculous numbers while he was at Benedictine Military School in Savannah, Georgia. They also gave him a ton of money to go there, and his ceiling is limitless in my eyes. Instead, Jeff Lebby will trot out a 15th-year guy in Blake Shapen, who has never really proven all that much, and Kromenhoek and his big NIL deal will go to waste. Maybe it won't happen, and maybe I'm being negative, but for a school like Mississippi State, who's near the bottom of the SEC, you need to do everything you can to get better, and you should pour your resources into players who make the most sense and have the most potential. I would go at Luke Kromenhoek, but again, I'm not a college football coach. There's not a quarterback I'm more excited to watch in the SEC next year than Lenoris Sellers. Coming out of Florence, South Carolina, Sellers had quite the recruiting story, as he ended up having big numbers and originally went around between Virginia Tech and Syracuse before settling on South Carolina and being bumped to a 4-star. He showed a little bit of flash in 2023 as the backup to Spencer Rattler, but last season as the full-time starter, Sellers threw for 2,500 yards with 18 touchdowns and 7 picks, and also had nearly 700 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. Sellers got better as the year went on, and he healed from an injury and had that incredible game against Clemson. Sellers is being given high NFL attention for 2026 and is considered a Heisman Trophy candidate for 2025. He's someone I'm super excited to watch, and South Carolina better enjoy this guy while they still have him. Alright, another controversial opinion I have is that Michael Van Buren Jr. should start over Garrett Nussmeier. Coming out of St. Francis Academy in Maryland, Van Buren put up big numbers while he was in high school and actually originally committed to Oregon. He then would flip to Mississippi State, and last season would take over as the starter for most of the year after Blake Shapen went down. In total, Van Buren ended up throwing for 1,900 yards with 11 touchdowns and had 5 more scores on the ground. For an 18-year-old playing on a bad team in the SEC, he sure had his bright spot moments and decided to transfer up to LSU this past offseason. Garrett Nussmeier, on the other hand, had multiple years to prepare and had a good year in 2024, but did not play well against the best competition and squandered LSU's playoff hopes while they had really good weapons. I'm not saying this as a slight against Garrett. You get another 9-3 season out of him. Maybe instead you pour all your resources into Van Buren, who's more of a dual threat quarterback and has at least 2 more seasons to start for you. That's just my controversial take, and LSU fans might rip me down in the comment section below, but I'd almost rather see Michael Van Buren than Nussmeier this fall. The Alabama Crimson Tide have a quarterback battle going on in Tuscaloosa, and in a pretty crazy lineage of quarterbacks, Simpson is hoping to be the next one up. At one point, he was considered the darling of the 2022 high school quarterback class, as coming out of Westview High School, he put up crazy numbers while he was there. The 5-star decided to sign with Bama over Clemson, but these last 3 years, he has not really gotten an opportunity to get on the field. In total, he has not thrown a touchdown pass in 3 seasons, but he's the most experienced guy and has been groomed to be the starter for the Crimson Tide. Honestly, I think Keelan Russell and Austin Mack both might be more exciting, but you have to at least give Simpson a chance, and it's not like this guy was some bum either, as he was a 5-star and has 3 years of learning the system. We'll have to wait and see, but Simpson for now gets my approval. Alright, I saved my most controversial opinion for last, as I actually don't think Georgia should go with Gunnar Stockton. Sure, the guy put up ridiculous video game-like numbers in high school, but I'm just not really all that impressed with him. I think he's a good quarterback who has a fine ceiling, but I kind of want them to invest and put time into Ryan Puglisi. Coming out of Avon Old Farms High School in Connecticut, Puglisi has a strong arm and looks more like the kind of quarterback that Georgia's had recently. He's more of a future NFL mold dude who sort of reminds me of a guy like Jake Fromm or Jacob Eason, and after doing a bunch of research for my Georgia quarterback room video, it seems that he has the highest ceiling of any of the quarterbacks in the room. Puglisi's been getting a ton of hype and attention in camp as well, and if Georgia's gonna have to start over with a guy with pretty much no starting experience, I kinda wanna see what Ryan can do. Again, Stockton's a fine player, and will probably end up proving me wrong horribly here, but I just kinda wanna see them move forward with Puglisi, and they would get at least 2 years of starting out of him. So yeah, today I talked about who I want to start for every SEC school, and you may not agree. Let me know what you disagree with down below, who you think should start for every SEC school, and what I got right and wrong. Also, before you go, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.